Okay, the next panel. How to make Bitcoin sexy. I would say Bitcoin is already sexy, isn't it? But okay, maybe they want to discuss it in a specific way, how to make it sexy for programmers. And Aaron van Wirdum from Bitcoin Magazine will moderate and introduce the panelists. Aaron, panel is yours.
Thank you, Aaron.
Big round of applause for our panelists, the sexy programmers.
Everyone. So yeah, the panel is how can we make Bitcoin sexy for programmers? I'm joined by indeed 4 very sexy programmers. I got Dredd, John Newberry, Ted Straya, and Eric Voskuil. I'll let you guys briefly introduce yourself before we start. Dredd.
Afternoon. I'm Dredd from Jamaica, Bitcoiner. Also a big lightning bug, and I'm here because I'm also on the board for OpenSats, helping to try to fully fund developers with 100% pass-through. So, I want to make sure that we continue to grow that ecosystem, and I'm here to do that.
Thank you, John.
Hello, I'm John. I am an open source Bitcoin protocol developer. I've been working on Bitcoin Core for about 5 years, and last year I founded or co-founded Brink, which is a non-profit for supporting open source Bitcoin developers.
Taj.
Hello, I'm Tad Straja. I have been working on Bitcoin for a number of years, 8 maybe. Worked on the Lightning Network, discrete log contracts, currently working on something called U-Tree-XO to make it better.
You say you worked on a Lightning Network.
Yeah, wrote the paper with Joseph.
You co-wrote the white paper,
yes,
yeah.
Yes. No, that's what I do, yep.
Yeah, I think that deserves an applause.
Cool.
Eric.
I'm Eric. I'm been a maintainer of libitcoin developer library since 2013. Wrote Crypto Economics, held the CryptoEcon conference in Hanoi in 2020, and I guess that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, so Aaron already alluded to it. The question is, how do we make Bitcoin more sexy for programmers? Which presumes that Bitcoin is currently not sexy for programmers. We're going to just keep using the word sexy, right?
Attractive?
Is Bitcoin currently not sexy for programmers, or is it? What's your thoughts? Who wants to start? Who wants to take this one? John, you're looking at me like you really want to take this one.
I'll take this one. I think Bitcoin is very exciting for programmers. I mean, we're making the best kind of money that has ever existed. What's more exciting than that? What else would you want to be doing with your life?
Maybe working on some shit currency protocol with a pre-mine that earns you a lot more money.
It's not about the money, it's about the sound money.
Eric, what do you think? Is Bitcoin programming currently sexy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on it for a long time. I still get excited about it. I think for new people coming on, right, it's hard. It takes a long time. It takes a couple years, steady work to figure out what the heck's going on. And one thing we could do is make that onboarding process easier, better tools, better documentation. So I work on that, but finding what's actually Bitcoin, even that is hard in the beginning. So we could do better.
We can do better, and you mentioned one of the ways we can do better is by offering better, tools, as you said, or?
Yeah, tools so for example, if you're starting out, you find some Bitcoin, you find out what Bitcoin is, and then you want to work on it. You might be, as a new developer, very tempted to go grab some web APIs and put together some app, and make a company out of it or something. And the way I would look at that is you're not actually programming Bitcoin. So getting people to understand that is an issue, but also providing them the tools so they can develop Bitcoin as a decentralized system, is important. And those tools aren't great. And I've worked on them for some time, but overall across the industry, they haven't improved a lot. Some come and go, so you can't really be very assured that they're going to be around for a long time. And the main application is an application. It's not really designed for development. So the things that get built on top of that tend to be hard to maintain. A lot of forks, Bitcoin Core. Pretty much every company I know runs a fork of Core to maintain their system. That's not a way to start out a new developer, you know.
Ted, you work
Yes.
at MIT.
Yes.
What is your impression? Like, what do students think? Are students interested in Bitcoin?
So yes, in general, yes. The MIT Bitcoin Club is, I think, one of the oldest student Bitcoin organizations in like the world. And I gave a talk at the MIT Bitcoin Club in September with like a lot of new freshmen, a lot of new students, and also sophomores who hadn't even been there, you know, because of coronavirus in last year. And one of the first questions was, wait, why isn't it called the MIT Blockchain Club? And I was like, ooh, no, this is the Bitcoin Club, you know. And there's always definitely a lot of pressure, like, hey, what about all these other coins that have hackathons and free pizza and, you know, send out T-shirts and all that kind of stuff? Because that exists. Like, if you're on a college campus, if you're at MIT, there are booths, there are T-shirts. Like, people are sending that out. And on the one hand, like, Bitcoin doesn't do that, and I think that's okay because it's sort of like the real one. But it's also, sometimes I have to stop myself and be like, look, if I'm working with a student or talking to a student and they're like, oh, I'm working on some crazy coin, I don't want to like judge them, right? Like I've worked with several students that start into some altcoin that's, you know, whatever, but it's just because it came to the campus and there was free pizza, and so they went to the free pizza and they got involved, right? And then they got interested in all of this stuff and sort of gravitated towards Bitcoin. And then working with them for a few weeks, they're like, wait, this other thing doesn't really work. I get how Bitcoin works, and so they stay working on it, and, you know, I work on it with on Bitcoin with them. But it is, you know, new onboarding is something that is not just necessarily organic, right? You know, John is working on this stuff with Brink. There's Summer of Bitcoin. There are programs to try to get new students, get new people involved in it, and you know, outreach that way. And I think that's good.
What is it about Bitcoin that then draws their interest in, if it's not pizza?
It works.
It's the real thing, right? it's the real thing. It works. It's our best hope for real money. And if your values are aligned with that, like I said, why would you work on anything else? I mean, it's Bitcoin. What a privilege.
Dred, do you want to weigh in on this? Is Bitcoin currently sexy for programmers?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm not like a super coder like everybody else here on stage, but you know, if you look at it as Bitcoin being love, you know, it doesn't end up being all about the sexy pizza and the sexiness of programming. It's, you know, you're starting a real relationship with a true love, and that true love is the sound money we found. So if you get big like programmers to get that part, to fall in love with Bitcoin, then you might actually have that sexiness that you're looking for as well, maybe.
In general. In general, Bitcoin is currently working. You know, the blocks are found. It's worth more than last year, at least. It seems to be working. Does Bitcoin actually need more developers right now, or is the current number of developers working on the different implementations kind of enough to be sustainable?
No.
No.
No to the second one, not the first one, yeah.
Yes, we need more. No, we don't have enough. Yes, Bitcoin is working, but is it fulfilling its promise? Is it sound money for the world? No, not yet. It's been, what, 11 years? It's doing incredibly well. It's a miracle, but we've got so much work to do, and we need really smart people dedicating their lives to it.
Any contrarian thoughts there, or does everyone agree that Bitcoin does require more developers?
I mean, there's just so much more to do. There's so much more exciting, like, and that's another thing talking to students. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I work on Bitcoin. And they're like, oh, like, what do you work on? I thought it's sort of done. And it's like, oh no, look, here's all, you know, Taproot, you know, went in a couple weeks ago, and there's all these new protocols and all these new things to build on top. It may not have, you know, the marketing budget, but there's still like so many more things to build out to really get it to use. And I think, you know, here is one of the first times we see actual usage sort of in a country, and we're like, oh, and I'm sure people in El Salvador have found like, oh, it doesn't always work 100%, right? Like there's still definitely more things to fix up. So,
I already briefly mentioned the pre-mine, the competitors. To what extent do you guys think money is a factor here, or an important factor? Or how important is the factor money? Phrased differently, do we solve the problem by throwing more money at it? Eric, do you have any?
Well, as part of the Bitcoin project, I'm always looking for money to bring on good people that, so there's always contributors, volunteers, people that get interested, and over time, you get people that get a lot of experience, who are very good at what they do, but can't afford to work full-time on it. And we've been very lucky in the past. We got some significant support, a couple man years from some miners. And recently, we raised $400K from a private donor, brought us on a couple more man years. But that, when you think about it, a couple people, over the project's been around since 2011. And as far as I know, that's the only money that's come in for development, and that's really small. And it's a significant project. So there are a lot of people that want to be able to work, more hours and contribute a lot more that are very good people. But money is always an issue.
Yeah, Dred, go.
Yeah, I have an analogy for it, which, if Bitcoin Core was a big old engine and there's so many things to maintain it, then money's that engine oil, or if you're an EV guy, the electricity, but the engine oil. And, the easier we can get the money flowing through that engine, the better it's going to run, right? And the longer it'll maintain itself. So I really feel like if we're going to be trying to push money as one of the solutions, it needs to be a sustainable level of money, not just trickling or not just one big thing at a time. It needs to be consistent.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, go on,
I would just say, I want to point out that, yes, there is certainly a need for more and more funding for developers to make it sort of a solid career, but also if you look at the efficiency, just say, okay, how much has all these ICOs raised? I think, what was it, a couple years ago, EOS got $1 billion, and this got 500 million, 1 million, whatever. And Bitcoin, if you sort of add up all the funding that's gone to all the developers to pay salaries like mine and yours, and it's not that much, and Bitcoin's worth way more than all the other things put together. So it's like, oh yeah, this is the best bang for the buck, I think. So that's a good pitch for it.
Yeah, and to go back to your original question, can we just throw money at it? No. Money is necessary, but not sufficient, right? If we're looking for people to support this network that is now worth $1 trillion, we want the best people, right? We don't just throw money out. And programmers are not fungible, right? There are 10x programmers, there are 100x programmers. There's a sipper in the world who is unique, right? He can do things no one else can do. And if there's a programmer...
SIPA is Peter Wuille for people that don't know that maybe in the room.
Peter Wuille. And if there's a programmer who can find a bug in consensus that no one else can find, you could argue that programmer is worth $1 trillion, right? So we need to find the really good people and then make sure that they are well funded because they're doing important stuff.
So if I play devil's advocate for a second, is there maybe also a risk that more funding, more money would attract the wrong type of developers or wrong type of people? Maybe we would prefer developers that are purely ideologically driven rather than coming to Bitcoin to earn a buck.
Yeah, well, they need to be ideologically. Yeah, I think they need to be ideologically aligned. No, we're not going to get people doing good work on Bitcoin if they don't care for the project, if they're not deeply invested in sound money. But doesn't mean you can't pay them, right? You still got to pay them, and you've got to pay them well because they deserve it.
How important, so we've discussed ideological drive and money. How important is sort of the social aspect of Bitcoin development, like the Bitcoin development community, feeling part of the community, meeting other developers? Is that an important factor in attracting developers to this space?
I think that it becomes aligned with the ideology argument. Like in PlebNet, we have a lot of people that came together as a social aspect first. It wasn't about monetary gain, and that drove people who were ideologically aligned together organically. You didn't have to go interviewing, like right now if you want somebody to work on a Lightning project or you want a Lightning engineer, you could go to PlebNet and those people have like a year or, well, almost a year of just organic education between each other to know how to manage a Lightning node very skillfully and scale. So I do feel like the social aspect is very important. It's not just about cold calling and interviewing programmers.
Yeah, I would say though it's remarkable how it's not a very political. If you go on like Bitcoin Dev IRC, it's not really a political thing. There are people working on Bitcoin with very different ideologies. They all sort of align in terms of Bitcoin, but there are people who have like ideas that I'm like, whoa, what? Like, and we probably know who we're talking about. There's a bunch of way out there ideas, and also
I don't know, and I'm sure people in the room don't know. Do you want to?
No,
get specific, Taj?
No. But like people have very different ideas, and it's fun to sometimes meet people in real life for the first time. And you're like, oh wow, I didn't think that person. We know people as like little screen names on GitHub or IRC, and we know that they're really good at this or that. But it doesn't necessarily when it's online, it doesn't really become like, oh, we're buddies because we have the same politics or the same ideology on stuff other than Bitcoin. And I think that's good, and also because people can develop it anonymously. Like one of the things about Bitcoin is if you want to not have a name, you don't want to be identified, but want to contribute and write this kind of code, like pretty much everyone takes that seriously, right? We sometimes lean towards, oh, we know this guy, he's really smart, we'll listen to him more. But we try not to, right? And it's like we're going to look at this all openly. So that's, it is community, but it's also anyone's welcome. Cool.
Well, someone very wise once said Bitcoin is the money of enemies, right, Taj?
Yeah, currency of enemies.
That was Taj, yeah. On the social aspect, Eric, do you have anything to add there, or?
Sure. I love the social aspect of Bitcoin. I like to travel, and anywhere I go, anywhere in the world, if it's a decent-sized city, find a meetup, speak, meet people, know people where you are that have common interests, and happen anywhere. It's amazing. So it's not the same as your neighborhood buds you're hanging out with. It's pretty much online all the time, and then when you travel, something like this, run into people every night I go out that I know from around the world, which is amazing.
Yeah, Eric, you already touched on sort of the steep learning curve and starting with Bitcoin, and that's pretty difficult. So I want to hear from John as well, for example. How do we, and maybe there are people in the room that would like to become a Bitcoin Core developer. Like, what is the path? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky. In 2016, I quit my job because I wanted to work on Bitcoin. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to work on Bitcoin. And just at the same moment, Chaincode Labs announced their first residency program. And that was very, fortuitous timing for me because I was able to go to New York and learn about Bitcoin.
So what is the residency program?
It's a program run by Chaincode. That first iteration was run by Matt Corallo in 2016, and there were 4 of us. And
you were one of the students.
I was one of the 4 students, yeah. That's what started me on my Bitcoin career. And then I joined Chaincode Labs as an employee after that, and I ran the residency program in the subsequent years, and we kind of grew it a bit more to 15, 20 people per year, per iteration. But that's still not scalable, right? We can't get everyone in the world to fly to New York. And so Chaincode, I left Chaincode last year to move back to the UK. Chaincode, now under Adam Jonas and Carolee Crisco, the education program, are running online seminars, which is much more scalable. And I don't know how many, but tens, maybe hundreds of people have been through those seminars. So that's one way. If you want to learn about Bitcoin protocol and Lightning protocol development, look up the Chaincode Labs seminar programs. If you want to get into Bitcoin Core, come to the Bitcoin Core PR Review Club. That's every Wednesday at 5 p.m. UTC. And we will teach you about the process of contributing to Bitcoin Core. There are no stupid questions. Come, learn. We'll give you notes and questions beforehand so you can prepare. And there's so many materials out there, right? There are so many paths. If you're committed, if you want to learn about Bitcoin, there's so much out there for you to find and learn.
Taj, yeah, sure. Does MIT have a sort of onboarding?
So there's a course, Nehai and I, who is the head of the DCI, taught a couple years ago that's now on YouTube and MIT OpenCourseWare. And I've actually met several. I haven't really gone anywhere for the last 2 years, and that's when it got online publicly. And so this is the first time I've been, and just people I've never met are like, hey, I saw your course, and it's like, oh, great. And so we have a course that, so a video course where I and other people teach about sort of the basics of Bitcoin. And not just Bitcoin, but a lot of sort of general cryptography, hash functions, things like that. And there are some homework assignments. I think they're still on GitHub, I don't know. I sometimes randomly get questions about it, like on Twitter, and then someone asks about the homework assignment like 3 years after, and I'm like, oh, here's how you do it. So we do have that. And then the other stuff we do is I work with students, not just at MIT, but students at universities around on Bitcoin projects. That also is not scalable. But I think you need both, right? I think there is a place for, okay, I'm meeting with people every week or twice a week and like going over code and explaining things on a one-to-one level, as well as this sort of, okay, I record a lecture and then maybe thousands of people can watch it. So we do both, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So at that point, we have some more developers onboarded. They followed John's class, and now we have a Bitcoin Core developer. Now the next question, and we already touched on this, is if they want to work on Bitcoin full-time, there needs to be funding. And as Dred mentioned, it ideally means sustainable funding, a job. How are we going to ensure sustainable funding for Bitcoin developers? Dred, I'll start with you. What's the plan?
I'm always about the power of the plebs, as people know. So, we have 2 different tracks at OpenSats. Well, one of those tracks is where projects are being posted on the website, or developers that are working are also posting their profiles on the website. And plebs can directly fund those developers or those projects without needing to ask, see what the board is going to fund. They don't have to trust us. They can fund directly, and that would be 100% pass-through. I think if that becomes more the norm, then that could be a sustainable level of funding from the plebs. I don't know what level that would be, depending on how big the pleb army grows. But I think that would be sustainable. And then the other path would be more traditional, where
Well, let me stop you there. Why do you think that would be sustainable? Why do you think a donation model like that would be sustainable? Is that's just what you hope, or do you have a reason to believe that?
I think it's because of the gratification that might be almost instant. Because if I'm in a social network with a developer and they're developing a Lightning tool that I like, and the plebs are funding it, and I start using that Lightning tool and it is benefiting me, I'm going to continue funding it. I think that if that mentality grows and people realize that they're funding the tools they're using, then that'll be a sustainable cycle that can happen.
So it requires a mentality change compared to what we have now, or do you think the mentality is there and it just needs to grow, or does it require a mentality change from the Bitcoin community as a whole right now?
I think it's an evolution, yes, from where we are today. I think we're in a nascent stage of our communications with each other, and I think as we grow to trust the community more, that hopefully that evolution provides monetary benefit as well to the core devs.
Right, and I think I interrupted you. You just explained the first model you had, and you were on your way to explain the second model, is that right?
Yeah, so it's just more traditional, institutions or individuals can support our fund, and then our fund would be picking projects every quarter that we think are beneficial to the community, and then we would also put a lot of information out there on what the project's doing so people can see exactly how that project grows.
Sorry, is the difference where the money is coming from, or is the difference how it's being divided?
How it's being divided.
Okay, yeah, got it. John, do you have any thoughts on how do we fund Bitcoin development sustainably?
As it happens, I do.
Interesting.
I started an organization last year precisely to solve this problem, right? And the problems that I wanted to solve were, how do we fund Bitcoin developers? Obvious question. How do those donors know that their funds are being used effectively? Because I'm in this every day. I know what's going on in Bitcoin, but there are lots of people out there and companies that want to support Bitcoin, but don't know where they should put their money, right? They want good bang for buck. They want to know that they're funding effective contributors, developers, but they just don't know, so they need a bit of help. And the third aspect of what we do is mentoring, because there's not enough people, right? However much money you throw at this, if there aren't people to fund, you're not going to get any more work out of it. So those are the 3 problems that we exist to solve. We have 2 programs. We have a grant program, and we have a grant committee that assesses applications. We've given out 5 grants so far to very, very good developers working on cryptographic libraries, Bitcoin Development Kit, Bitcoin Core, and then we have a fellowship program in the office in London. We have our first fellow is in the audience here, Gloria. She's a Bitcoin Core developer. She's fantastic. And our second fellow, Martin, is starting next week. and I think they're both going to be incredible developers. So very excited about that.
Sorry if you mentioned this, but where are these funds coming from?
Where are these funds? Sorry, I got a bit carried away. These funds come from individuals and from entities. So we've raised around $4 million so far in terms of contributions and commitments over the next few years. That's great. We have a little bit saved aside. So if we go into a bear market in the next 2 years, we can continue to fund developers even if our donations dry up for a short spell. And that's important because we don't want to lose people, because they might not come back.
Yeah.
Attached to MIT DCA is also funded.
I think we probably share a lot of the same donors, right? And I think the donors are, you know, it's weird. It's like a donation, right? From a legal purpose, this is a nonprofit donation. But at the same time, if you want to think like, you know, game theory, rational, like it might make sense. If you're a person who has a lot of Bitcoin and you've seen your, you know, net worth go up a lot because of this, you're saying, hey, I'm paying some money, I'm giving some money for people to develop this system. And if this system goes up in value because it's stronger, because these people are building it more, well, I benefit, right? So maybe I shouldn't go into this too much because maybe you lose your tax-exempt status or something. But it does sort of feel like, yes, this is not just donation. This is, you know, if you're very invested in the system, whether you're, you know, just a person who has a lot of Bitcoin or a company exchange that, you know, depends on Bitcoin heavily, it's probably in their interests to, you know, fund people developing this and making the system better.
To be clear, it's a donation.
Yep.
It's interest, but one of the problems is you do have the free rider problem, right? Like for any individual or any individual company, it's better if all the other companies fund and you don't have to do anything.
If we
as
stop
some Bitcoin companies actually do.
If we all stop working on Bitcoin, we will still have the Bitcoin we have, and it'll still go up in value maybe when other people work on it, I guess. But we want to work. I want to work on it.
I think Aaron's question was more on the donor side, that there are exchanges that have been notorious for not giving back. I think the only answer to that is, like I said earlier, Bitcoin belongs to the users. Demand that your exchange gives back to Bitcoin, integrates Lightning, uses SegWit, et cetera, and gives back to developers.
Yeah.
Eric, is Libitcoin funded? What's the model for the Bitcoin?
Well, the Bitcoin, like the others, is, you know, donation-based, and I think it's important to the integrity of Bitcoin that funding for core development is donation-based. I mean, we got perilously close to a, you know, kind of a corporate control model with the Bitcoin Foundation in the early days, and I mean, it was donation-based, but if you look at the long list of corporate money that was flowing into it, and the control they effectively had, it wasn't ideal. And that was actually one of the reasons why Amir Taki created Libitcoin. Also tried to open up the process by creating the BIP system, which we all use. And that, you know, he's an independent guy. And we have, you know, an independent project. It's never been a fork of core. And having, you know, independent, privately funded, donation-based development is essential to maintaining this kind of community-built system. Otherwise, you know, money brings strings, and ever since I got started, I decided I was not going to take, you know.
I think Rodolfo's getting very impatient.
Yeah, I just decided to not have strings, so that's what we do.
Okay.
Oh yeah, thanks everyone for being here.
A big round of applause or no?
What's that?
We are on time. We are rounding up.
Yep.
I can't hear what he's saying.
We are on time already.
Okay, yeah, we're done, right?
0 time, 0, 0, 0.
We're good. Guys, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Okay. Well, I need a...
Great.
I get a
Tati, this
clicker?
is yours.
Ah.
You are now the owner of the stage.
Does it
Thank
make
you.